The city moved fast that afternoon. People walked with their heads down, eyes fixed on phones, bags swinging from tired arms. Cars honked in the distance. A train rumbled underground. In the middle of it all sat an old public piano, slightly chipped, its white paint faded by sun and rain. Most people passed it every day without a glance. The man stopped in front of it. He did not look special. That was the point. His jacket was plain, his shoes worn but clean. His hair showed signs of gray, trimmed short, nothing stylish or bold. If anyone noticed him at all, they might have thought he was just another tired traveler, killing time. No one knew that he owned companies worth billions. No one knew his face from magazines or business news. Today, he wanted it that way. He stood there longer than most would. His eyes rested on the piano keys, some yellowed, some scratched. One key was cracked on the corner. The bench wobbled slightly when he touched it with his hand. He almost walked away. For a moment, the noise of the city grew louder in his ears. Meetings, numbers, flights, contracts, years of chasing success. Years of winning. Years of losing parts of himself along the way. Then he sat down. The bench creaked under his weight. A young couple walked past, laughing. A street vendor called out about hot drinks. No one paid him any attention. He placed his hands on his knees, not the keys. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from memory. It had been a long time. Much longer than he liked to admit, music had once been his whole world. Before the money, before the long nights and sharp suits, before people listened to him only because of his wealth, back when his hands were young and his dreams were simple, he breathed in slowly. A woman nearby glanced at him and then looked away. To her, he was just another man sitting at a public piano, probably about to press a few random keys and give up. He lifted his right hand. His finger hovered over the first key. He didn't press it yet. He listened instead, to the city, to the rhythm of footsteps, to the soft wind brushing through the open space. This piano was not tuned well. He could tell just by listening to the silence around it. Still, it was enough. His finger touched the key. A single note rang out. Slightly flat. Not perfect. He smiled, just a little. The sound pulled something loose inside him. A memory of a small room long ago. A second-hand piano. Late nights, when the world felt wide open, he pressed another key. Then another. The notes came slowly, carefully, like words spoken after years of silence. His left hand joined in, uncertain at first. He missed one note, then corrected himself. No one noticed. A teenager walking by frowned, as if the sound was strange but not worth stopping for. An older man paused for half a second, then continued on. The man at the piano didn't care. His shoulders relaxed. His back straightened. His hands began to remember what his mind had never forgotten. He wasn't playing to impress. He wasn't playing for the crowd. He was playing because something inside him needed air. The tune was quiet, gentle, almost shy. It drifted through the open space like a forgotten story. Somewhere behind him, a child tugged on a parent's sleeve and asked what the sound was. The parent shrugged and kept walking. The man kept playing. His eyes were open. But he wasn't really seeing the people anymore. He saw a younger version of himself instead, sitting alone, practicing until his fingers hurt, believing that music could be enough. Life had taught him otherwise. Or so he had thought. He slowed for a moment, then continued. The melody was old, older than many of the people passing by. It carried the feeling of another time when songs were shared by listening, not scrolling. A woman sat down on a bench nearby, waiting for someone. She noticed the music without meaning to. It wasn't loud, but it was steady, real. She listened for a few seconds longer than she planned. The man at the piano didn't look at her. His focus stayed on the keys, on the small cracks and worn edges. Each one felt familiar, like scars that told a story. He made another small mistake. He paused. The city noise rushed back in for a heartbeat. Then he continued. He adjusted his touch, softer now. The piano responded the best it could. He had played in large halls once. Bright lights. Perfect instruments. Applause that echoed for minutes. This felt better. This felt honest. A passerby slowed down, then stopped a few steps away. He folded his arms, not sure why he was listening, only that he didn't want to leave yet. The song was still forming. It hadn't reached its heart yet. It was like a door slowly opening. The man leaned forward slightly, as if telling the piano a secret. His fingers moved with more purpose now. The hesitation faded. He forgot where he was. He forgot who he was supposed to be. For these moments, he was only a man and a melody. The crowd around him was still thin. Most people hurried past, unaware that something rare was beginning. The man didn't notice them anyway. He played on, and the city, busy and loud, gave him space without realizing it. The music continued. Slow and careful at first, like a conversation that had just begun. The man's fingers moved with more trust now. The notes were still soft, but they carried more meaning. They no longer sounded unsure. They sounded like they knew where they were going. A few more people noticed. A man with a backpack slowed his steps. He pretended to adjust the straps, but really he was listening. A woman holding a coffee cup stopped near the edge of the open space. She didn't plan to stay long. It's just long enough to hear where the tune was heading. The man at the piano did not look up. His breathing matched a rhythm of the song. In and out, calm, steady. Each note pulled another memory forward. Not sharp memories, not painful ones, just moments. A small apartment, thin walls. Late nights, when the city outside was quiet, back then music felt like a promise. He pressed a deeper chord, and the sound spread wider. The piano answered with a low hum, not perfect but strong. It filled the space more than before. The sound bounced off nearby walls and drifted toward the street. Someone laughed in the distance. Someone else dropped coins into a cup nearby. Life kept moving, but something had shifted. A young man stopped walking altogether. He stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the ground, listening. He didn't know why this music held him. He only knew it felt different from the noise he heard every day. The tune grew warmer, the man's left hand. It moved more freely now. His right hand followed, adding small details, gentle turns in the melody. The song was still quiet, but it had shape now. It was no longer a test. It was a story. He remembered the first time he played this piece in front of someone else. He had been nervous then too. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of not being enough. That fear had never really left him. Money had made life easier, but it had not made him braver. In many ways, it had done the opposite. People listened to him now because of his success, not because of his heart. Here, no one knew. That felt like freedom. A child tugged on a parent's hand and asked if the man was famous. The parent shook their head and smiled. Just someone playing music, they said. The man almost laughed at that. Just someone. He leaned in slightly, letting his weight settle into the bench. His fingers pressed the keys with more confidence. The melody lifted, rising gently, like a bird testing its wings. An older woman stopped and sat on the bench nearby. Her eyes closed for a moment as she listened. The song touched something deep and familiar. She couldn't place it, but it felt like home. The man noticed her out of the corner of his eye. He played a little softer. The notes stretched out, giving space between them. The silence between sounds became part of the song. People felt it even if they didn't understand why. More passers-by slowed. A small circle formed without planning. No one spoke. No one clapped. They just listened. The man's hands no longer trembled. He remembered why he had loved music in the first place. It didn't rush. It didn't argue. It didn't ask for proof. It simply existed. He added a gentle change to the melody. Something unexpected, but natural. It made the tune feel older, like it had lived many lives before reaching this moment. A man near the edge of the crowd whispered, "I haven't heard anything like this in years." The words floated away, but the feeling stayed. The piano key with the cracked corner made a faint clicking sound when pressed. Instead of avoiding it, the man used it carefully, letting its imperfect sound add character. Perfect was overrated. The song grew fuller. Not louder, but deeper. It wrapped around the listeners instead of reaching out to grab them. People stopped, checking their phones. Someone lowered their camera without realizing it. This didn't feel like something to capture. It felt like something to be present for. The man's thoughts drifted to all the times he had walked past moments like this. Too busy, too important, too focused on what came next. He had almost done it again today. The melody slowed slightly, then picked up again, like a steady heartbeat. It carried both sadness and hope. Without pushing either too hard, a woman near the front wiped her eye and looked surprised by her own reaction. She didn't know why she felt emotional. She just did. The man felt it too. His throat tightened for a moment, but he kept playing. He let the feeling move through his hands instead. This song had been written a long time ago. In a different season of his life, he had thought it belonged to the past. Maybe it didn't. The crowd was larger now. Not large enough to block the walkway, but enough that people noticed something was happening. Some stood at a distance, unsure if they were allowed to join. No, one stopped them. The music welcomed everyone. The man lifted his head slightly for the first time. His eyes met the open space ahead of him. Faces blurred together. Young, old, tired, curious. He saw himself in them. He returned his focus to the keys. The song moved toward something familiar now, a section that many had not heard in years, if ever. The notes carried the feeling of late afternoons and long roads, of choices made and chances missed, of love that didn't last, and dreams that changed shape. The piano responded the best it could. Its sound was rough in places, thin in others. Still, it held together, so did he. A man at the back of the crowd nodded slowly, keeping time with the music. A teenager leaned against a pillar, arms crossed. Listening without pretending not to care, the city noise faded further into the background. The man played on. Fully present now, the song was no longer just his. It belonged to the moment, and the moment was growing. The song moved into a deeper place. It was no longer just gentle or familiar. It carried weight now. The man felt it in his chest as his hands pressed the keys. Each note seemed to come from somewhere older than memory, from a place that had been quiet for too long. The crowd noticed the change. People leaned in without meaning to. The open space felt smaller, closer, as if the sound had pulled everyone toward the same center. Conversations stopped. Footsteps slowed. Even the traffic noise seemed to fall back. It's like it was giving the music room to breathe. The man's fingers traveled across the keys with ease. The piano was far from perfect, but it no longer mattered. He had learned long ago how to work with what he had. Back when money was not an option, back when effort was the only currency he knew. Low chord rolled out and settled into the air. Something about it made a few people look up sharply. It wasn't loud. It wasn't sudden. It was familiar in a way that was hard to explain. An older man near the edge of the crowd shifted his weight. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but in recognition. He had heard something like this before. Long ago, on a radio that crackled, in a room filled with cigarette smoke and quiet laughter. He didn't say anything. He just listened. The melody turned. Gently at first, then with more confidence. The man at the piano followed it without thinking. His hands knew the way. They always had. This part of the song had not been played in public for decades, not because it was forgotten, because it belonged to a time people had moved past. A time when music lingered instead of rushed. When songs were allowed to unfold slowly. A woman near the front pressed her hand to her chest. She didn't understand why her heart felt heavy. The tune brought back images she hadn't thought about in years. A kitchen table. Evening light through a window. Someone humming while washing dishes. The man felt a tightness in his throat again. He swallowed and kept playing. This was the part where he used to stop. The part where doubt would creep in. Where he would worry that the song was too slow, too quiet, too old, Today, he didn't stop. He leaned into it instead. The notes flowed with more strength now. The melody widened, opening up like a long road ahead. It didn't rush forward. It invited the listener to walk alongside it. The crowd grew thicker. People stood 2 and 3 rows deep now. Some had arrived without knowing why they stopped. Others had been drawn by the stillness that had settled over the space. A man lifted his phone to record, then lowered it again. He decided to just listen. The cracked piano key clicked softly under the man's finger. He smiled to himself and used it again. The small sound added texture. Like a breath taken between words, he remembered the night he finished writing this song. He had been younger, tired, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. The piano bench pushed aside. He had wondered if the song mattered. If he mattered, he never imagined this moment. A soft change in the melody caught the crowd's attention. The song slipped into a section that felt both new and old at the same time. It carried the weight of experience without losing its warmth. Someone whispered, "This feels like something my parents used to play." Another voice replied, "It feels older than that." The man didn't hear them. He was somewhere else. His hands moved with purpose now, pressing deeper, holding notes a fraction longer. The sound filled the open space in a way that made people forget where they were. The piano vibrated beneath his fingers. The bench no longer wobbled, or maybe he no longer noticed. A young woman near the back closed her eyes. She had come to meet a friend. She forgot about the time, forgot about the message, waiting on her phone. The music asked nothing of her. It simply gave. The man's breathing changed with the song. Slow during the softer parts. Steady during the fuller ones. He felt grounded, present. More real than he had in years. This was not a performance. It was a return. The melody dipped briefly and rose again, stronger. It carried a quiet promise. Not of happiness, but of understanding. An older woman nodded gently, keeping time with the rhythm. Her eyes glistened, but she did not wipe them away. She let the feeling sit where it was. The city seemed to hold its breath. Even those passing by without stopping felt it. Something in the air slowed them, softened them, even if only for a moment. The man reached a familiar turning point in the song. His fingers paused for the smallest fraction of a second. Years ago, this pause scared him. Now, it felt right. He let the silence stretch. People leaned in. Then he continued. The notes that followed carried a sense of release, like a long exhale after holding breath for too long. The melody moved forward with quiet confidence. A few people exchanged looks. They didn't speak, but they shared the same feeling. This was something rare, not because it was perfect, because it was honest. The man felt warmth spread through his hands, up his arms into his chest. He was no longer thinking about the past or the future. He was here. The piano answered him as best it could. Some notes rang clear. Others fell short. Together, they made something whole. The crowd grew stiller. No one clapped between phrases. No one interrupted. They seemed to understand that the song was still speaking. The man's shoulders relaxed further. His posture softened. He no longer looked like someone passing time. He looked like someone exactly where he needed to be. The melody began to circle back on itself, bringing earlier themes forward. People who had been listening since the beginning recognized it. Those who had arrived later felt it settle into them anyway. The song did not rush to end. It allowed itself to exist. The man glanced up again, just briefly. He saw faces filled with attention, not expectation. No one wanted him to hurry. No one wanted him to impress. They just wanted him to continue. He did. The notes grew quieter, drawing everyone closer. The sound felt personal now, as if it were being played for each person alone. Man's fingers slowed. The song was nearing its heart, and everyone listening could feel it. The song reached a place that felt like standing at the edge of something important. The notes slowed, then rose again, fuller now, steady and sure. The man's hands moved with quiet strength. There was no rush. No need to prove anything. The music carried itself. The crowd felt it. People stood closer together without realizing it. Strangers shared the same space, breathing the same air, connected by something they could not see. A few people who had been walking by stopped at the very edge, sensing that they had stepped into something already in progress. The man leaned slightly forward, his shoulders relaxed. His fingers pressed deeper into the keys, drawing out a richer sound from the worn piano. The instrument responded the best it could. Humming and vibrating beneath his touch, this was the part of the song where everything came together. The melody grew wider, carrying both the softness from earlier and the strength that had built over time. It felt like a long journey finally making sense. A woman near the front covered her mouth with her hand. Tears filled her eyes, surprising her. She wasn't sad. She wasn't happy either. She just felt something open inside her. A man behind her cleared his throat and looked away. Embarrassed by the tight feeling in his chest, no one spoke. The city seemed to pause. The man's fingers danced across the keys now. Not fast, but confident. Each note landed exactly where it needed to be. The cracked key clicked softly again, and again he used it, letting its imperfect sound become part of the moment. He remembered the first time he had played this ending. Back then, he had doubted it. He had wondered if it was too quiet, too simple. People around him had told him to change it, to make it louder, shorter, easier to digest. He never did today. He was glad. The melody lifted higher, filling the open space. It wasn't loud enough to overwhelm, but strong enough to hold everyone's attention. The sound wrapped around the listeners like a shared memory. An older man near the back whispered, "I never thought I'd hear something like this again." The words drifted through the air and disappeared, but the feeling remained. The man at the piano felt warmth rise through his chest. His eyes stung slightly, but he kept them open. He wanted to see this moment clearly. For years, his life had been filled with applause that felt empty. Meetings that felt important but faded quickly. Praise that never reached his heart. This was different. This was real. The song began its final movement. The melody softened, then grew again, like waves reaching shore and pulling back. Each rise carried more emotion, more meaning. A young person near the front sat down on the ground, arms wrapped around their knees, completely still. A couple held hands without looking at each other. The man's breathing stayed calm, even as his hands worked harder. His fingers pressed firmly, holding certain notes longer, letting them ring out before gently releasing them. The piano sang. The space felt sacred. Even though it was just a busy public place moments ago, the man reached the final phrase of the song, the one he had always loved the most. His hands slowed. The notes stretched. Time felt different. People leaned forward, afraid to miss even a breath of sound. The melody descended gently, like a story finding its ending without force. Each note felt like a goodbye and a thank you at the same time. The man pressed the last chord. It rang out full and warm, vibrating through the piano and into the open air. Then he lifted his hands. Silence. For a long moment, no one moved, no one clapped, no one spoke. The sound of the city slowly returned. A distant car horn, footsteps, a voice calling out. The man remained still, his hands resting lightly. Above the keys, he breathed out. The silence broke when someone near the front let out a quiet breath they didn't realize they were holding. Then, the applause began. Not loud at first, not sudden. Just a few hands coming together slowly, then more. The sound grew, spreading through the crowd. People clapped with purpose, with gratitude. Some smiled through tears. Others nodded, as if saying thank you without words. The man stood up slowly. He did not bow. He simply stepped back from the piano. The applause continued. Filling the space where the music had been, a few people called out soft words of praise. Others stayed silent, clapping with their eyes closed. The man felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief, joy, a quiet sadness that the moment was ending. He placed his hand gently on the piano. As if thanking it, someone near the crowd whispered his name. Another voice questioned it. Phones came out again, messages sent quickly. A quiet buzz moved through the group as recognition began to spread. The man noticed the shift. He stepped away from the piano. The applause slowly faded. Replaced by murmurs and curious glances, he pulled his jacket closer and walked toward the edge of the crowd. People made space for him, without blocking his path. No one tried to stop him as he walked away. He heard pieces of conversation behind him. Words like "no way" and "that can't be him" floated through the air. He did not turn around. The moment had already given him more than enough. He blended back into the movement of the city. Just another figure among many. Behind him, the piano sat quietly, keys still warm, and the people who had listened stood changed, holding on to a feeling they would struggle to explain. They knew one thing. They had witnessed something rare, and they would not forget it. The man walked away from the crowd without looking back. His steps were calm, unhurried. The noise of the city slowly wrapped around him again, filling the space where the music had been. To anyone watching from a distance, he was just another person heading somewhere else inside. He felt different. He had not planned for this moment to matter so much. He had only meant to sit for a few minutes, to touch the keys, to remember who he used to be. Instead, something deeper had happened. Something he didn't know he needed. He blended into the moving crowd, passing shops, street signs, people talking on phones. No one stopped him. No one asked questions. A few faces turned, unsure, as if trying to place him. But the city quickly carried him forward. Behind him, the crowd around the piano slowly broke apart. Some people lingered, standing quietly, not ready to leave yet. Others walked away shaking their heads in disbelief. Already pulling out phones to tell someone what they had just seen, a woman sat down on the piano bench after a while. She didn't play. She just rested her hands on the keys, feeling the warmth left behind. The song stayed with them. People carried it in different ways. Some felt lighter. Some felt thoughtful. Some felt emotional without knowing why. A man who had stopped only for a moment now found himself late for work. But he didn't mind. A young person replayed the melody in their head, wishing they could hear it again. An older listener smiled quietly. Remembering a time when music felt like that more often, the piano returned to silence. But it was not the same silence as before. The man walked several blocks before slowing down. He stopped near a quiet street and leaned against a wall for a moment. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply. For years, his life had been full of noise, plans, pressure, expectations. He had learned how to move fast, decide quickly, and never slow down. Today, he had slowed and nothing bad had happened. In fact, something good had found him. He thought about all the rooms he had been in where people listened to him speak, nodded, took notes. He thought about how empty those moments often felt. No one had listened, like that crowd had listened. Not because of who he was, but because of what he shared. He straightened up and continued walking. Later that evening, short videos of the performance began to appear online. Shaky clips, soft sound, people asking questions and comments. Some recognized him. Many didn't believe it. The story spread quietly at first. He just sat down and played. No one knew who he was. I was there. It felt unreal. News outlets picked it up the next day. Small ones first, then bigger ones. Articles talked about the surprise performance, about the forgotten song, about the moment that stopped a city in its tracks. They mentioned his success, his wealth, his companies, but those who had been there knew that wasn't the point. The man read a few of the articles and then closed them. He didn't share them. He didn't comment. He sat alone in a quiet room later that night. No screens, no calls. Just a small piano in the corner, polished and perfect. He didn't play it. Instead, he sat and thought. He thought about the cracked keys, the uneven bench, the way the sound had filled the air anyway. He smiled. In the days that followed, people returned to the piano. Some played, some listened. Some just stood for a moment, hoping to feel what they had heard about. A small sign appeared nearby, placed there by someone unknown. It didn't explain anything. It just said, "Sit, play, listen." The man visited the place again once, early in the morning, when no one was around. He stood at a distance this time. He watched someone else play. The notes were simple. Not perfect, honest. That was enough. He walked away smiling, knowing he didn't need to return again. The moment had done its work. For the people who were there that day, the memory stayed. They told the story to friends, to family, to strangers, not about money, not about fame, but about a song, about how it made them feel, about how, for a few minutes, the world slowed down and reminded them of something simple and real, and somewhere in the city. A public piano waited quietly, ready for the next pair of hands brave enough to touch the keys.